Josiah really enjoyed that. It was really insightful. It's real easy for me to get excited about this kind of thing. I think this is in the broad category of literary analysis, and specifically structural analysis. And I find that to be very helpful and very useful. I know that Nathan here? Oh, Nathan's not here. Well, I was hoping he might input it. Nathan's done a lot of this, and I find it to be very, very useful. I've done a little bit, not as much as he's, but and a couple years ago, I did a presentation here, maybe it was in Texas, I don't remember, at the study on the last 12 verses of the book of Mark. And there's a book by an author by the name of Nicholas P. Lunn, The Original Ending of Mark. I highly recommend that book, and I didn't even get into it. He applies this type of analysis to the book of Mark, and in particular the last 12 verses, and how it all presents a convincing case to me, I guess. But my question is, although I'm very excited about this, at the same time, I wonder to what extent we can ascribe, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, and I'm not trying to undercut anything you presented here, it's just a question. To what extent can we ascribe this to inspiration? What was the other part of my question? Oh, because if you look at someone else will come up with a different analysis. And it's just as convincing and persuasive. And I wonder, to what extent is it growing out of the inspiration of Scripture, or is it a creative application of just analysis? I don't know. I don't know. Could you comment on that? I said all I said at the beginning, just to emphasize. I'm not trying to undercut at all what you're saying.
I agree.
But at the same time, this question always nags me when these kinds of things come up. So I'll let you talk.
Yes. So with Lund's book, the great thing about that is all the graphic organization in it. When he has all those charts, when you see it all laid out, this is just a graphic organizer. So what you're saying about inspiration, going through Romans, going through different books, and you see how it's laid out, it all has one author. It all has one author overall, who is beyond perfect, beyond our imagination. And so the contents, and I tell people after my sermons, I may have wrote the sermon about it. I write the contents. The contents is good because it's inspired of the Holy Spirit, as long as I'm preaching the Word. And so you're right. You may make an outline. Instead of 8 units, you may say, no, there's 7. Alan may say, no, there's 12. Roger may say, no, there's 13. So experience will dictate partially what you want to emphasize. If you want to emphasize the direction, if you want to emphasize all the points of Moses going up and down the mountain, if you want to emphasize so they did, those coming up. What I did in this portion, according to the pattern, I traced each section of what was happening according to the pattern. Now, the first time that I made this outline, when I did chapter 26, which is from here to here, there were only 3 lines. And when I did chapter 26, I did verses 1 through 30. I just put the diagram curtains. That didn't broaden, that didn't help my knowledge of the chapter. So I broke it down. If you did it, you might put more emphasis on the arc, the patterns within the structure of the arc. So you're right. There are different outlines that you're going to get from a book. And a couple of years ago, I started looking at various outlines. And they would have outlines in this section, in this overall section right here. They just called it basically the journey to Sinai. Well, the journey to Sinai, that helps me remember what's happening in that section, but it doesn't help me remember what's in that section. So that'd be my answer.
Good. That was excellent. Thank you. Specifically, I really enjoy stuff like this as well. I wanted to see if you would comment on kind of the reception that you've gotten from the members of your congregation and people that you've studied through books like this with.
Yes, sir. So I presented this coincidentally a couple weeks ago, right before Brother Alan asked me. And half the room, they really enjoyed it. They said, we're looking forward to this Exodus study. And so I guess what I should explain, I didn't really do this at the beginning. My hope, let's find a better slide. My hope is for each of these 8 units to be broken down into a sermon. So now, at my congregation, I'm going to walk through Exodus. That's what I've been focusing on for these last 6 months. Now I'm going to preach through it. And half the audience was very excited. The other half, this is what I put on the whiteboard. And it was too overwhelming. They want 3 points in a poem, 3 points in a poem, 3 points in a poem. And I look at this and I go, Moses didn't write with 3 points in a poem. And so I want to accurately display what the word says. When you look right there at the beginning, Unit 1 I covered very fast. And you can see in each of those chapters, 3 points, 3 points. Well, I'll put it like this, Ben. I'll try to summarize. After I realized how overwhelming this was, and the way I desired to teach it is how Brother George, at least here we've experienced, he hands out the pamphlets. They would have this in their hands as we go through it so that you're not squinting trying to read it. But the next day after I realized how overwhelming it was, I sent out a text. I said, Bible person of the day, Aaron. I gave 3 facts about Aaron. Aaron was the older brother of Moses. Aaron helped Moses lead the people. This was Aaron's first chapter. This was Aaron's last chapter. And they said, this is great. Tell me more about Moses. That's what I want. I want someone to say, tell me more about Moses. Tell me more about David. Tell me more about Jesus. And so they said, Moses died on the mountain. Why? That's true. Moses did die on the mountain, okay? In Numbers 20, Moses struck the rock when he was told to speak to the rock. And they texted back and they said, why did Moses disobey? Did he not understand? And if that doesn't convict you, when you then have to say, no, he understood. He was frustrated. He was angry. He said, here now, you rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? And he rebelled. What I want people to get, there are chapters of the Bible, there are portions of the Bible that are big and scary, difficult. Genesis is more than a bunch of hard names in those few chapters that have all the names. Exodus is more than just confusing patterns about a drape. It's about getting to God. It's about getting to Jesus. I had somebody the other day, they said, Matthew's genealogy, I don't understand Matthew's genealogy. And I said, have you considered going to chapter 2? I want you to get Matthew's genealogy. It's important, but it's not going to make sense if you don't know who Abraham and David are. So making it simple. And I want to make it as simple as possible without compromising the text. So that'd be my answer.
That was great, Josiah. So I take it in answer to David's question about inspiration as opposed to creative design of the interpreter, that it's sort of a combination of the two. And while the interpreter, in this case you, may put a break at this point or that point or the other point, someone else may put it in a little different spot. I think the point that must be understood is that these men who wrote the Bible, they were good writers. And the Bible has been put together as literature. And of course it's inspired, every word of it's inspired. Mm-hmm. But one of the reasons that people have always been interested in it is because it's good literature. Yes, and I think it's important. What you're doing here is very important. One of the reasons that people in the past, maybe some people now, don't enjoy expository preaching is because teachers often focus so minutely on words and phrases and so on that they miss the big picture of what the argument is or what the narrative is trying to say. And people need an outline so they can know how Paul or Moses or whomever is writing the book, how they are arranging their material and what they're driving at. Mm-hmm. Yes, words are important, phrases are important. But if you start out by examining the leaf under a microscope, you may not know that it's attached to a branch, a tree, or let alone that there's a forest there. And so this is very important, what you're doing. And I appreciate it very much, and I appreciate the example. And of course, as we've studied the book of Romans together, you know how important I think it is that people get the outline of what's being said. For one thing, it enables you to understand the book better, but also it enables you to, when you hear somebody say something about the book, you can put it in its place in the book. And most questions people have, you can answer or at least get a good start on an answer if you know the outline of the book. So I think what you're doing is a great thing, and it's a good example for our people. And of course, the book of Exodus, when you're talking about the drapes and the construction of the tabernacle and all that, one of the things it's emphasizing is the holiness of God and whether or not man is going to be submissive to God in every detail. And so, anyway, I appreciate what you did, especially since you only had 10 days' notice.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Josiah. I have a little bit of a question. I see a lot of outlines that they just go A, B, C, D, E, and then I see some that they make this kind of a V shape, and I saw that yours was like that. And I understand that people often do that with like the idea of a chiasm, sure, where there is paralleling going on, mm-hmm, and I believe that you presented that some of that is happening. I'm wondering, I hear sometimes the idea that a chiasm, the middle point, which would be the point of the V, is the emphasis of the whole passage. And I'm wondering if that's always true, or if it's normally true, or if it's just something that people have maybe come up with to try and argue for their point of emphasis, and they say, look, this is the middle of a V. And so, I mean, it's literary criticism,
right?
And I don't understand it all extremely well, so I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
That's good. When looking at it, I did not seek out to put the emphasis at right there in the middle of the chiasm. So the first outline I did was Matthew, then I did Genesis, and I've done 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, Revelation. Revelation was the easiest to make because of all the patterns. And you see those patterns, and it's easy to outline it. But I didn't always put the emphasis in the middle of the chiasm. I just let the text be what the text was. And if you see A, B, C, B, A, and the emphasis may be on that second A, I just let the text do it. There were a couple points. My Genesis, I'm going to have to redo my Genesis because I think I forced it more than I should have. But after doing several, getting into it, I feel more comfortable with the Exodus one because I don't feel like I was stretching it as much. But yeah, I see what you're saying about the emphasis, not just let the text be what the text is.
I took it that there were maybe not more questions, so I just wanted to say we're looking forward, the world is looking forward to your outline on Leviticus.
Well, the next 6 months are Mark, so maybe I'll have a little more time before July when I start working on Leviticus. Thank you.
Well, this usually falls on deaf ears, but just like I've encouraged Doug to write books on what he understands about prophecy, so that's what I'm talking about, deaf ears. They're not just literal, but anyway, I think you should. But I think you should work on this and polish this stuff up and publish it. It's be helpful to people in their teaching, mm-hmm, and we need to improve teaching always. And I would encourage you to do that.
The reason I started, what inspired this, Brother Ron and I presented on Psalm 105, and we got in the car, and Ron said that if he could do it all over, what he would have done. He said he would like to each year go through a psalm, go through a character study, a chapter, a book. And I thought, well, I was 23 at the time. What could I do now that I'm not going to wish I had done later? And so what I intend to do, like I said, each 6 months do a different book. And I call it the 40-year challenge. So 39 books in the Old Testament, 27 in the New Testament. And I could have just jumped in the middle, but I want that foundation of Genesis. I want that foundation of Exodus, and I want that foundation leading me so that I'll have the right conclusions in the more difficult books later on. So as far as publication, I've always said I don't want to publish because I know everybody's just going to critique everything that's published. But the thing is, I want to provide a tool that is helpful and accurate.
Would you like to make any closing comments or anything?
No, sir. Just thank you all. Thank you all for your attendance. I told Richard the other day, it seems like every study, Richard always addresses the young men. And Brad's talked about it, Todd's talked about it, David talked about it. And this isn't academia. I want to stick on the lead. But I want to tell every one of you, I have a lot of grandfathers in this room. Never stop being concerned about us. Never be afraid and stop correcting us. Because we need you. And so in Exodus 18, when Jethro came to Moses, there was a concern. He said, in Exodus 18, beginning verse 13, so it was on the next day Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood before Moses from morning until evening. So Moses' father-in-law saw that all that he did for the people, and he said, what is the thing that you're doing for the people? Why do you alone sit, and all the people stand before you from morning until evening? Moses said to his father-in-law, because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a difficulty, they come to me, and I judge between one and another, and I make known the statutes of God and his laws. So Moses' father-in-law said to him, the thing that you do is not good. Both you and these people who are with you will surely wear yourselves out. For this thing is too much for you, and you are not able to perform it by yourself. Listen now to my voice. I will give you counsel, and God will be with you. Stand before God for the people, so that you may bring the difficulties to God. And you shall teach them the statutes and the laws, and show them the way in which they must walk and the work they must do. Moreover, you shall select from all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and rulers of tens. And let them judge the people at all times. Then it will be that every great matter they shall bring to you, but every small matter they themselves shall judge. So it will be easier for you, for they will bear the burden with you. If you do this thing, and God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all this people will also go to their place in peace. The counsel we get is upon the condition if God so commands us. So I just want to thank you all. Thank the congregation once again.